I wasn't born with wealth. I wasn't handed the keys to a kingdom. I came from humble beginnings, a small town kid with big dreams and little direction. But I had something far more valuable than a trust fund. I had hunger. Not the kind you satisfy with a sandwich. I mean hunger for something better, something bigger. A desire to create a life that was more than just survival. In my early 20s, I was broke. Not just financially, I was mentally broke, emotionally broke, spiritually broke. I had excuses. I had complaints. I had reasons why life wasn't working out the way I thought it should. And that's the trap, isn't it? The illusion that external circumstances are responsible for your internal state. Then something happened. I met a mentor. A man who looked me in the eyes and said, "Jim, if you want things to change, you've got to change. If you want your life to be better, you have to be better." And those words, simple, sharp, undeniable, cut through all my excuses like a knife through soft bread. That was the day I stopped looking outside myself for answers. That was the day I stopped blaming the government, my parents, my boss, or the economy. I turned the mirror inward. I asked myself, what kind of man do I need to become to attract the life I want? And so began the climb. I started reading. I read books that expanded my mind, challenged my thinking, and reshaped my philosophy. I listened. I surrounded myself with people who were going somewhere. I watched how they walked, how they talked, how they worked. I studied success like it was a science, and it is. Success is not a mystery. It leaves clues. Every morning, I woke up with a goal. Not just to make money, but to become someone worthy of wealth. I disciplined my time, sharpened my focus, and committed to small daily improvements. I sold products, I gave speeches, I coached others. And with every step, my confidence grew. Then, after years of sowing the seeds, I reaped the harvest. I became a millionaire. It felt like victory. I had the house. I had the car. I had the lifestyle. People began to listen. People began to ask for advice. I was invited to speak on stages. I was praised, admired, celebrated. But here's the truth that nobody talks about. Success has a shadow. And if you're not careful, it'll consume you. You see, when I became a millionaire, I also became something else, complacent. It's easy to forget where you came from when you're sitting on a throne. It's easy to believe you're invincible when the money's rolling in, when the applause doesn't stop, when the world treats you like you can do no wrong. But success is not permanent. And discipline doesn't stay by accident. I stopped doing what got me there. I stopped reading every day. I stopped asking tough questions. I let my ego take the wheel and my character take a nap. I made decisions based on comfort, not courage. I started living for applause, not for purpose. And little by little, the empire I built began to crack. The money started to dwindle. Investments went south. Opportunities dried up. Relationships faded. And one day, I woke up and realized, I had lost it all. Let me tell you something. Losing everything is one of the greatest blessings disguised as disaster. Because when you lose the outer wealth, you're forced to face your inner poverty. When the noise fades, you finally hear your own voice again. And that voice asked me, what did you learn? I learned that success is rented, and rent is due every day. I learned that the habits that build you must become non-negotiable, even when you feel like you've arrived. I learned that the greatest asset you'll ever have is not money, but mindset. It's not the car you drive, but the character you carry. It's not your reputation in the world, it's your reputation with yourself. And so I started again. No pity. No whining. No blaming. Just work. Just reflection. Just relentless personal growth. I went back to the basics: reading, journaling, planning. I revisited the disciplines that shaped me. I spoke not from the mountaintop, but from the valley. And strangely, people resonated with that more. They saw not a perfect man, but a real man. A man who climbed, fell, and climbed again. Because that's the story people relate to, not the fairy tale, but the fight. You see, real success is not about never falling, it's about rising every time you do. It's about resilience. It's about learning how to fail forward. It's about knowing that you are not your bank account. You are not your title. You are not your mistakes. You are who you decide to become, every single day. I didn't rebuild just the money, I rebuilt me. Stronger, wiser, more grounded, more grateful. And I promised myself something. I will never again trade my principles for comfort. I will never again sacrifice discipline for pride. And I will never again forget that the climb is what keeps you sharp. The climb is where you grow. The climb is where you discover who you really are. So if you're listening to this and you're at the bottom, good. That means there's only one direction to go, up. And if you're already at the top, don't get too comfortable. Because the top is only meaningful if you keep earning your place there. Let this be your wake-up call. Wealth without wisdom is like a mansion built on sand. You need a strong foundation. A philosophy. A discipline. A mindset that refuses to be shaken. I became a millionaire once by chasing success. I became a man of value by losing it. The moment I realized I had lost it all, something deep within me shifted. I stood there, no wealth to show, no comfort to lean on, and no audience cheering. It was just me, stripped of luxury, face to face with the truth of my choices. And it was in that silence that I heard the loudest lesson life ever taught me. Success is never owned, it is rented, and the rent is due every single day. I remembered the days when money came easily, when every decision I made seemed to turn into gold. I had become arrogant, not just in business, but in mindset. I thought the rules no longer applied to me. I stopped learning. I stopped listening. And most dangerously, I stopped growing. The mindset that had once propelled me to greatness became the same mindset that led to my downfall. And that's when I realized, losing everything wasn't my punishment, it was my education. Wealth can disappear. But wisdom, that stays with you forever. I had to relearn the basics. Not just about business or finance, but about discipline, focus, humility, and self-control. I had to humble myself enough to understand that I had become the architect of my own destruction. But more importantly, I could also become the architect of my comeback. The journey back didn't begin with money. It began with vision. A clear, defined vision of who I wanted to become. Not what I wanted to have, but what I wanted to be. Because true success is not what you get, it's who you become in the process. I asked myself the hard questions. Am I still willing to do the hard work? Am I still hungry to learn? Am I still committed to mastering the small things every single day? Because success doesn't come from grand gestures. It comes from consistent, small disciplines repeated daily. It's waking up with purpose. It's doing the work even when no one's watching. It's living by principles, not moods. I stopped chasing outcomes and started building habits. I replaced pride with gratitude. I replaced ego with effort. I replaced fantasy with discipline. There's a quote I used to teach, and now I had to live it. Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. I had wished away difficulty, and that made me weak. Now I welcomed the hard days, because they were forging something stronger inside me. They were making me wiser, more focused, more resilient. I stopped pretending I had all the answers and started becoming a student again. I read, I studied, I asked questions, I listened. I surrounded myself with people who had something to teach me, not just people who wanted something from me. I rebuilt my network with intention. I realigned my values with discipline. And I redefined success, not as the cars, the houses, or the applause, but as the peace of knowing I was becoming the best version of myself every single day. And the beautiful part is, when you build yourself, success comes as a byproduct. The money came back. The opportunities showed up again. But this time, I was different. I wasn't desperate to hold on to it. I was prepared to manage it. I had earned it the hard way, not just in effort but in transformation. People asked, weren't you embarrassed by your failure? No. Because failure wasn't the end, it was the reset I needed. The embarrassment would have been in refusing to learn, refusing to grow, refusing to start over. But I did start over. And I started better. You see, life doesn't reward the person who never fails. It rewards the person who refuses to stay down. I could have lived in regret, but I chose to live in responsibility. And that's the key, ownership. When you own your story, both the rise and the fall, you gain power. You stop being a victim and start being a leader. Most people run from failure, but the successful ones learn from it. They lean into the discomfort, because that's where the real growth is. I had to learn to be comfortable with discomfort. I had to be willing to feel the sting of discipline now so I wouldn't feel the sting of regret later. Discipline. That was the missing ingredient in my fall, and the foundation of my rise. Discipline in how I spent my time. Discipline in what I consumed, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Discipline in how I treated people. Discipline in how I thought. Because every thought creates your future. If you think weak, you live weak. But if you think strong, if you think growth, if you think victory, you begin to attract and act in ways that bring it to life. I stopped chasing motivation and started creating habits. Because motivation fades. But habits stick. I scheduled my success. I made routines that aligned with my goals. And I respected my time, because time is the most expensive currency you have. You can lose money and earn it back. But when you lose time, it's gone forever. And in this journey, I discovered a deeper kind of wealth. Not just financial, but emotional, spiritual, and relational. I built relationships based on authenticity. I found peace in simplicity. I learned to say no to what didn't serve me. And I fell in love with the process again, not just the results. So, if you've ever failed, let me tell you something, it's not the end unless you quit. Don't be afraid of losing everything, be afraid of becoming nothing in the process. Use your failure as fuel. Use your pain as your platform. And most importantly, use your past as your teacher, not your prison. Because in the end, it's not about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you get up, learn, and rise stronger than before. When I started rebuilding my life, I wasn't chasing wealth, I was chasing character. I understood this time that success without a strong foundation will eventually collapse. It's like building a skyscraper on sand. Sooner or later, the weight of it all will bring it crashing down. I had tasted success once. I had lost it all. But now I wanted something more powerful, something that no economic crash or business loss could take away, a rock-solid mindset. I realized that in order to lead others, I had to first lead myself. That's where true leadership begins, not in words, but in actions. Not in public speeches, but in private disciplines. So I stopped asking, what do I want? And started asking, who must I become? Because who you become determines what you attract. If you want to attract success, become valuable. If you want to attract trust, become trustworthy. If you want to attract abundance, become disciplined. I began to live by one simple truth. Life doesn't respond to need, it responds to seed. You don't get what you want, you get what you plant. I had spent years wanting more, needing more, but I wasn't planting the right seeds. So I shifted. I focused on planting the seeds of discipline, consistency, and humility. And over time, those seeds grew into opportunities, wealth, peace, and influence. You see, the journey back taught me something that success never could: patience. When you lose it all, and you're forced to start from zero, you can't rush the process. You must fall in love with the grind. You must become the kind of person who gets excited about the climb, not just the summit. Because it's in the climb that you grow. It's in the grind that your character is built. And the higher your character, the higher your capacity to hold success. This time, I did things differently. I listened more than I spoke. I saved more than I spent. I planned more than I hoped. I became more focused on building something that would last, something rooted in truth, not ego. I studied the greats, not just what they achieved, but who they had to become to achieve it. I looked at their failures, their struggles, their habits, and I mirrored them. And here's the secret. It was never about the money. It was about mastery. Mastery over my thoughts. Mastery over my emotions. Mastery over my time. Because when you master yourself, there is nothing outside of you that can conquer you. The storms will still come, but you will not be shaken. I stopped blaming circumstances and started taking full responsibility for my life. I no longer saw problems as obstacles, I saw them as training. Life wasn't punishing me, it was preparing me. Every challenge was shaping me for the man I was becoming. I remember a time when I would wake up dreading the day. Now I wake up with purpose. Because I'm not living to impress, I'm living to impact. And impact comes from authenticity. From doing what you say you'll do. From staying true to your values even when no one's watching. People often ask me now, would you go back and avoid the loss if you could? And my answer is always, never. Because it was in the loss that I found myself. It was in the emptiness that I discovered my true wealth. You see, becoming a millionaire isn't just about the money, it's about the growth. And losing it all isn't failure, it's refinement. I learned that money is a tool, but your mindset is the foundation. If you build a weak foundation, no amount of money can save you. But if you build a strong foundation, even if everything crumbles, you can rise again. And now I live with a different kind of fire. Not the fire of ambition alone, but the fire of purpose. I don't just want to succeed. I want to serve. I want to teach. I want to pass on what I've learned, not because I read it in a book, but because I lived it in the dark. My message to anyone listening is this: don't fear failure, fear never starting. Fear staying stuck. Fear living small. Fear a life without growth. But never fear falling, because the fall might just be the beginning of your rise. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. What matters is your will to continue. Your decision to stand up and say, I'm not done yet. Because as long as there is breath in your lungs, there is power in your choices. Don't waste time regretting the past. Learn from it. Don't waste time envying others. Build yourself. Don't waste time waiting for the perfect moment. Create it. You don't need permission to change your life. You only need a decision. So stand tall in your scars. Speak boldly from your wounds. And rise, not just to chase success, but to become someone worthy of it. Because in the end, the true measure of wealth isn't in your bank account, it's in the strength of your character, the depth of your wisdom, and the impact of your life.